I knew something was wrong the moment I saw Marcus Webb walk into the Sunridge Valley Homeowners Association meeting with a briefcase that looked like it had been purchased from a discount store that morning. My name is Frank Navarro, and I had lived in Sunridge Valley, Arizona for 8 years. The neighborhood sat on the outskirts of Scottsdale, a planned community of 200 homes with Spanish-style architecture, pristine lawns, and enough regulations to make your head spin. I had never been particularly involved in HOA politics until that Tuesday evening in March when everything started to unravel. The meeting room at the community center smelled like old coffee and air freshener. About 30 homeowners had shown up, which was actually a decent turnout. Most people only came when they were angry about something. I was there because our previous property manager, Helen Curtis, had quit 2 months earlier after a screaming match with the HOA president, and I wanted to see who they had hired as her replacement. Sharon Pemberton, our HOA president, stood at the front of the room with her arms crossed. She was 52, had that specific haircut that seemed to be regulation issue for women in positions of minor authority, and wore her authority like a crown. Next to her stood a man in his mid-30s with slicked-back hair, an ill-fitting suit, and a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Everyone, please settle down," Sharon said, tapping the microphone unnecessarily. "I would like to introduce you all to Marcus Webb, our new property manager." Marcus comes to us with extensive experience in property management and community relations. Marcus stepped forward and gave a little wave. "Thank you, Sharon. I am thrilled to be here and looking forward to working with this wonderful community. I have managed properties all across Arizona and Nevada, and I can assure you that Sunridge Valley is in excellent hands." Something about the way he spoke made my skin crawl. It was too rehearsed, too smooth. My wife, Elena, had always said I was paranoid about people, but 20 years working as a fraud investigator for an insurance company had taught me to trust my instincts. "Does anyone have questions for Marcus?" Sharon asked. I raised my hand. "What company did you work for previously?" Marcus did not miss a beat. "I was with Desert Horizon Property Management for 6 years. Before that, I worked with various residential communities in Las Vegas." "And your credentials?" I pressed. "What certifications do you hold?" Sharon shot me a look that could have frozen water. "Frank, we have already vetted Marcus thoroughly. The board conducted extensive interviews." "I am just curious," I said, keeping my tone light. "It is standard to have certain certifications, right? Like a real estate license or property management certification." Marcus smiled wider. "Of course. I hold a CAM designation and have my real estate license through the Arizona Department of Real Estate. I would be happy to provide copies of my credentials to anyone interested." That should have satisfied me, but something still felt off. I made a mental note to look into it later. The meeting continued with the usual complaints. Mrs. Henderson from Oleander Street was upset about someone parking an RV on the street overnight. The Johnsons wanted to know why their request to paint their front door navy blue had been denied. Someone complained about the pool hours. Standard HOA drama. After the meeting, I lingered near the refreshment table, pretending to be interested in the store-bought cookies while watching Marcus interact with homeowners. He was charming, that was certain. He laughed at jokes, nodded sympathetically at complaints, and handed out business cards like candy. I grabbed one of his cards on my way out. It was basic, just his name, title, and contact information. No company logo, which I found strange. When I got home, Elena was in the living room watching television. "How was the meeting?" she asked without looking up. "Interesting. They hired a new property manager. Good. Maybe he will actually return phone calls unlike the last one." I sat down at my home office desk and opened my laptop. A quick search for Marcus Webb brought up dozens of results, none of them relevant. I tried adding property manager and Arizona to the search. Still nothing useful. No LinkedIn profile, no company website mentions, nothing. I tried the Arizona Department of Real Estate website next. They had a licensee lookup tool. I typed in Marcus Webb's name and hit search. No results found. I frowned and tried variations of the name. Marcus A. Webb M. Webb. Nothing came up. Maybe he had his license under a different state. I tried Nevada's Real Estate Division website. Still nothing. The CAM designation he mentioned stood for Certified Association Manager, issued by the Community Association Managers International Certification Board. I found their verification page and searched for his name. No Marcus Webb appeared in their database. I sat back in my chair, feeling that familiar prickle of suspicion that had served me so well in my career. Either Marcus Webb was operating under a different name, which would be weird, or he was lying about his credentials. I decided to dig deeper. Over the next few days, I called Desert Horizon Property Management, the company Marcus claimed to have worked for. The receptionist was friendly enough. "I am trying to reach a former employee of yours, Marcus Webb," I said. "He gave your company as a reference." "Let me check our records," she said. I heard typing. "I am sorry, sir, but we do not have any record of anyone by that name working here." "Are you sure? He said he was there for 6 years." "I have been here for 8 years, and we are not a large company. I would know." "Perhaps you have the wrong company." I thanked her and hung up. The knot in my stomach tightened. I spent my lunch breaks that week investigating. I called property management companies in Las Vegas. None of them had heard of Marcus Webb. I checked court records, business registrations, anything that might give me more information. What I found instead was concerning. There was a Marcus Webb who had been convicted of fraud in California 3 years ago. The photo from the court documents was grainy, but it could have been the same person. This Marcus Webb had been running a home renovation scam, taking deposits from elderly homeowners and never completing the work. I printed out everything I could find and put it in a folder. Then I emailed Sharon Pemberton requesting a meeting with the HOA board. She responded within an hour. "Frank, what is this about? We are very busy preparing for the spring landscaping projects." I wrote back. "It is regarding Marcus Webb. I have some concerns about his background that the board should be aware of." There was a longer delay before her next response. "The board will meet with you Thursday evening at 7. Please keep this matter confidential until then." Thursday could not come fast enough. I arrived at the community center at 6:45, folder in hand. The board members were already there. Sharon, Vice President Robert Chen, Treasurer Linda Hayes, and Secretary Patricia Morrison. Sharon did not offer me a seat. "Frank, what is this about?" "We have already spent considerable time and resources hiring Marcus." I opened my folder and placed my findings on the table. Marcus Webb has no property management credentials. He does not have a real estate license in Arizona or Nevada. He never worked for Desert Horizon Property Management. The CAM designation he claims to have does not exist in any official database. And I found a Marcus Webb who matches his description, convicted of fraud in California. The board members exchanged glances. Linda picked up the papers and started reading. "This is quite serious," Robert said quietly. He was the only board member I genuinely respected, a retired engineer who approached problems logically. Sharon's face had turned red. "Frank, I do not appreciate you going behind the board's back and conducting some kind of vigilante investigation." "I am not going behind anyone's back." I am bringing legitimate concerns to the board, which is exactly what a homeowner should do. We conducted interviews, Sharon insisted. We checked references. What references? I asked. Did you actually call them? Did you verify his credentials? The silence that followed was answer enough. Patricia finally spoke up. Sharon said she had verified everything. We trusted her judgment. All eyes turned to Sharon. She crossed her arms defensively. I spoke with Marcus at length. He was very professional and knowledgeable. He provided references. Did you call them? I repeated. I did not have time to call every single reference. He had an impressive resume and we needed someone quickly. So you hired him based on his word alone, I said. Linda was still reading through my documentation. This is damning, Sharon. We need to address this immediately. We should contact Marcus and give him a chance to explain, Sharon said. There could be a reasonable explanation. The reasonable explanation is that he lied, I said. The question is what you are going to do about it. Robert nodded. We need to suspend him pending a full investigation. If these allegations are true, we could be liable for any actions he has taken on behalf of the HOA. What actions has he taken so far? I asked. Has he had access to HOA funds? The board members looked at each other again. Patricia checked her notes. He has had access to the management account for processing payments and handling maintenance requests. Sharon gave him the account information last week. My heart sank. How much money are we talking about? Linda pulled out her phone and logged into the HOA's banking portal. Her face went pale. There were withdrawals, several large ones. The account balance is $43,000 less than it should be. What? Sharon grabbed the phone from Linda's hands. That cannot be right. Show me. Linda pulled up the transaction history on her phone and held it so everyone could see. 3 withdrawals over the past week. $15,000, $18,000, and $10,000. All authorized by Marcus Webb's electronic signature. What were these for? I asked. According to the notes, landscaping deposits and emergency roof repairs, Linda said. But I do not remember approving any roof repairs. Neither do I, Robert said. Sharon was frantically scrolling through her emails. He sent me reports about these. I approved them because they seemed legitimate. Without consulting the rest of the board, Patricia asked, her voice rising. Sharon, that is not how we operate. He said they were time-sensitive, Sharon protested. The landscaping company needed a deposit to secure spring pricing, and the roof repairs were for Building 6, where there was supposedly a leak. There is no leak in Building 6, I said. I live in Building 6. The room erupted into chaos. Everyone was talking over each other, voices rising in panic and anger. I let them argue for a minute before holding up my hands. We need to call the police, I said loudly. This is fraud and embezzlement. We also need to contact our bank immediately and see if we can stop any pending transactions. Robert was already on his phone. I am calling the Scottsdale Police Department. Linda called the bank. The rest of us sat in stunned silence. Sharon had her head in her hands, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers took our statements and collected the documentation I had brought. They seemed unsurprised by the whole situation. We have been seeing more of this lately, the older officer, Detective Martinez, said. People posing as contractors, property managers, financial advisors. They target communities and businesses, gain trust, and disappear with whatever they can get. Is the money recoverable? Linda asked. Sometimes. It depends on how quickly he moved it and whether he is still in the area. We will need all of your financial records and any communication you have had with Mr. Webb. Sharon pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I have all of his emails and text messages. Good. Forward those to me. Detective Martinez handed her a card. "We will also need access to any security camera footage from the community center and any other places he may have been." I remembered something. He gave us all business cards. They might have fingerprints. That is helpful, but if he has no criminal record in Arizona, fingerprints might not help us identify him immediately. "He has a record in California," I said, pointing to my folder. "Fraud conviction 3 years ago under the name Marcus Webb." Detective Martinez's interest sharpened. "That could be our guy. Do you have case numbers?" I slid the papers across to him. "Everything I found is there." The younger officer was already on his radio, calling for additional units to check Marcus's listed address. Detective Martinez continued taking statements from each board member. When it was my turn, I walked him through everything I had discovered. He took careful notes. "You did good work here," he said. "Most people do not catch these things until the person is long gone with a lot more money." "I used to investigate fraud for an insurance company," I explained. "Well, you saved your community from losing even more. 43,000 is bad, but it could have been worse." After the police left, the board sat in the meeting room looking shell-shocked. The reality of what had happened was sinking in. "We need to notify the homeowners," Robert said. "They have a right to know." "And say what?" Sharon snapped. "That I hired a con artist who stole their money." "Yes," Patricia said coldly, "because that is exactly what happened." "The homeowners are going to demand your resignation," Linda added. "You know that, right?" Sharon's eyes filled with tears. "I was trying to help. We needed a property manager and he seemed perfect." "You got played," I said, not unkindly. "It happens. These people are professionals, but you should have done your due diligence. That is what the board is supposed to do." "What do we do now?" Sharon asked. "We call an emergency homeowners meeting," Robert said. "We explain what happened, we show them that we have contacted the police, and we figure out how to move forward. We might need to levy a special assessment to cover the missing funds until we can recover them." The collective groan that went through the room was understandable. Special assessments were never popular. "We also need to change all of our passwords and account access immediately," Linda said. "Who knows what else he might have access to?" We spent the next hour securing every account, email, and system that Marcus might have touched. Sharon provided his login credentials, which he had used to access the HOA's management software. Linda changed the banking passwords and set up additional security measures. By the time we finished, it was past midnight. I drove home exhausted, my mind racing with everything that had happened. Alina was asleep on the couch when I got in. I gently woke her and explained the situation. "Oh my God," she said, fully awake now. $43,000. Could have been more if I had not started digging. "You think they will catch him?" "I hope so. But guys like this, they are usually good at disappearing." The emergency homeowners meeting was scheduled for Saturday morning. By then, news had spread through the neighborhood faster than wildfire. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from neighbors wanting to know what had happened. I gave everyone the same answer: come to the meeting. Saturday morning, the community center was packed. Every seat was filled and people lined the walls. The energy in the room was angry and scared. These were people's homes, their investments, and someone had violated their trust. Sharon stood at the front, looking like she had not slept in days. The rest of the board sat behind her, faces grim. "Thank you all for coming," Sharon began, her voice shaking. "I know you have heard rumors, and I am here to tell you what happened and what we are doing about it." She explained everything, taking full responsibility for the failure to properly vet Marcus Webb. To her credit, she did not make excuses or try to minimize her role. The room was silent as she spoke, but I could feel the anger building when she finished. Hands shot up. Sharon pointed to Mrs. Henderson. "How could you let this happen?" Mrs. Henderson demanded. "We trusted the board to protect our interests." "I made a terrible mistake," Sharon said. "I should have verified his credentials more thoroughly. I take full responsibility." "Your responsibility does not get our money back," someone called out from the back. "The police are investigating," Robert interjected. "We have provided them with all of the information we have. Detective Martinez has assured us they are pursuing every lead." I raised my hand and Sharon nodded at me. I stood so everyone could see me. For those who do not know me, I am Frank Navarro from Building 6. I was the one who discovered the fraud and brought it to the board's attention. I want everyone to know that the board acted quickly once they were aware of the situation. The police are involved, all of our accounts are secured, and we are doing everything possible to recover the funds. "What about the missing money?" someone asked. "How are we going to cover the shortfall?" Linda stood up. "Our insurance policy includes coverage for theft and fraud. We have already filed a claim with our insurance company. However, there is a deductible of $10,000, and the claim process can take several months. In the meantime, we may need to implement a temporary special assessment to cover essential services." The room erupted in protests. People shouted over each other, demanding answers, accountability, and solutions. "How much of a special assessment?" someone yelled. "We are still calculating that," Linda said. "It depends on what expenses we have coming up and how much of the stolen money we can recover. We are hoping to keep it under $200 per household." More shouting. $200 was significant, especially for the retirees and families living on tight budgets. I stood again. "I understand everyone is angry. I am angry too, but we need to work together here. The money is gone and yelling at the board is not going to bring it back. What we need to do is support the police investigation and make sure this never happens again." "Easy for you to say," a man I did not recognize called out. "You are not the one who hired the criminal." "No, but I am the one who caught him," I shot back. "And if we want to make sure this does not happen again, we need to implement better oversight. Background checks, credential verification, multiple board members signing off on large expenses. These are all things we can fix." Robert nodded. "Frank is right. We are already drafting new policies for vendor and employee vetting. No one will have access to our accounts without proper verification again." The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, a motion was made to accept Sharon's resignation as president, which she offered willingly. Robert was appointed interim president. A special committee was formed to oversee the fraud investigation and insurance claim, which I reluctantly agreed to join. As people filed out, many of them stopped to thank me for uncovering the fraud. Mrs. Henderson, who usually complained about everything, actually shook my hand. "You saved us from losing more," she said. "Thank you." Over the next few weeks, the investigation progressed slowly. Detective Martinez kept us updated when he could. They had confirmed that the Marcus Webb, who had posed as our property manager, was the same Marcus Webb convicted of fraud in California. His real name was actually Marcus Weber, and he had several aliases. The address he had provided on his application was a short-term rental that he had already vacated. The phone number went straight to a disconnected message. His email accounts were shut down, but the police had caught a break. One of the checks Marcus had written from the HOA account had been deposited at a bank in Tempe. Security footage from that bank showed him making the deposit in person. We have circulated his photo to all law enforcement in the Phoenix metro area, Detective Martinez told us at a follow-up meeting. He is still in the area, or at least he was 2 weeks ago. We will find him. Meanwhile, Life in Sunridge Valley continued, albeit with a shadow hanging over everything. The special assessment was approved at $150 per household after Linda found some areas where we could cut costs. The insurance claim was processing, though slowly. Robert turned out to be a much better president than Sharon had been. He implemented new policies requiring multiple board signatures on any expense over $500. All vendors now had to provide verifiable credentials before being hired. Background checks became mandatory for anyone with access to HOA funds. I found myself more involved in HOA business than I had ever intended to be. The special committee met weekly to review our security measures and financial controls. It was tedious work, but necessary. 6 weeks after Marcus Webb disappeared, Detective Martinez called me directly. "We got him," he said. "Where?" "Flagstaff. He was working at a resort under another fake identity. One of our officers recognized him from the bulletin we sent out. He is in custody now." Relief flooded through me. What happens next? He will be extradited back to Scottsdale to face charges. Based on what we found, he is looking at multiple felonies: wire fraud, identity theft, forgery. He is going away for a long time. What about the money? That is where it gets complicated. He spent some of it, but we were able to freeze several accounts before he could drain them completely. We think we can recover about $30,000 of the $43,000 he took. It was not everything, but it was something. I thanked Detective Martinez and immediately called Robert to share the news. That evening, Robert sent out an email to all homeowners announcing Marcus's arrest. The response was overwhelming. People were relieved, vindicated, and some were still angry about the money that would not be recovered. But at least there would be justice. The legal process moved forward. Marcus Webber, as we now knew him, was formally charged with 15 felony counts related to his activities in Sunridge Valley and other communities he had targeted. It turned out we were not his only victims. He had pulled similar schemes at 2 other HOAs in Arizona, stealing a total of over $120,000. I was called to testify at a preliminary hearing. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, and Marcus sat at the defense table looking nothing like the confident man who had walked into our meeting months earlier. He wore an orange jumpsuit and kept his eyes down. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Reynolds, walked me through my investigation step by step. I explained how I had discovered the discrepancies in his credentials, the phone calls I made, the documentation I found. Marcus's public defender did not even cross-examine me. There was nothing to challenge. After my testimony, Jennifer approached me in the hallway. "You did excellent work," she said. "Cases like this often fall apart because people do not document things properly. Your records made this prosecution straightforward." "I just did what needed to be done," I said. "Well, your community is lucky to have you. Most people would not have noticed anything was wrong until he was gone with a lot more money." The case moved to trial 3 months later. Marcus pled guilty to 12 felony counts in exchange for the prosecution dropping 3 lesser charges. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in prison and ordered full restitution to all victims. The restitution was nice in theory, but as Jennifer explained to us, collecting it would be difficult. Marcus had no legitimate assets. Whatever money he had not spent was long gone, hidden in accounts we might never find. The insurance would cover most of our losses, but not all. Sunridge Valley slowly returned to normal, or a new version of normal. Robert remained president and proved to be excellent at the job. The board operated with new transparency and accountability. Every expenditure was documented and approved by multiple people. We hired a legitimate property management company with verified credentials and excellent references. I became something of a local hero, which was uncomfortable. People thanked me constantly, invited me to neighborhood barbecues, and nominated me for the board. I declined the board position but agreed to continue serving on the oversight committee. Elena found the whole thing amusing. "You always said getting involved with the HOA was a waste of time," she teased one evening over dinner. "It usually is," I said, "but sometimes it matters. You saved a lot of people from losing their homes, Frank. That matters." She was right, even if I did not want to make a big deal of it. Some of our neighbors, particularly the retirees on fixed incomes, would have been devastated by larger losses. The special assessment had been manageable, and the insurance eventually paid out most of the claim. A year after Marcus's arrest, I received a letter from the Arizona Attorney General's office. They were prosecuting a broader case against fraud targeting HOAs and planned communities. My testimony and documentation had helped them build a comprehensive case that would hopefully prevent similar schemes in the future. I testified again, this time before a grand jury. The proceedings were sealed, but Jennifer told me later that my testimony had been instrumental in securing indictments against 3 other individuals running similar operations. "You started a domino effect," she said. "People heard about your case and started looking more closely at their own situations. We have uncovered 5 more cases of property management fraud in Arizona alone." It was gratifying to know that something good had come from the chaos. But it also made me wonder how many other communities were being victimized without knowing it. Back in Sunridge Valley, life had truly returned to normal. The pool was repaired, the landscaping looked beautiful, and the constant drama of HOA politics settled into the background. Sharon moved away 6 months after her resignation, unable to face the daily reminders of her mistake. I actually felt bad for her. She had meant well, even if her execution had been terrible. Mrs. Henderson still complained about everything, but now she did it with a knowing smile in my direction, as if we shared a secret. The Johnsons finally got approval to paint their door navy blue after Robert streamlined the approval process. Parking violations continued to be reported with religious fervor. One evening, about 18 months after the whole Marcus Webb incident, I was walking my dog around the community when a young couple approached me. They had just moved into a unit in Building 3. "Are you Frank Navarro?" the woman asked. "I am. We heard what you did catching that fake property manager. That is amazing. It actually made us feel safer about buying here, knowing the community takes fraud seriously." "Well, we learned our lesson the hard way," I said. "But yes, we take security seriously now." "Our real estate agent mentioned it specifically," the husband added. "Said Sunridge Valley had the best HOA oversight in Scottsdale after what happened." After they walked away, I smiled to myself. Something positive had indeed come from all of it. We had turned a nightmare into a learning experience, not just for our community but apparently for others as well. I thought about Marcus Webb sometimes, sitting in prison. Did he regret his choices? Did he think about the families he had hurt, the stress he had caused? Probably not. People like him rarely did, but his actions had consequences beyond his prison sentence. They had made our community stronger, more vigilant, more united. We had learned that blind trust was dangerous, that verification was essential, and that one person asking questions could make all the difference. As I continued my walk, passing the perfectly maintained lawns and Spanish-style homes of Sunridge Valley, I felt a sense of pride. Not just in catching a criminal, but in being part of a community that had faced a crisis and come out better for it. The HOA meetings were still boring. The regulations were still excessive. And Mrs. Henderson would probably complain about something tomorrow. But underneath it all was a foundation of genuine care and attention that had not existed before. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Board meeting Tuesday. We need to vote on new pool furniture. Your input would be appreciated. I sighed. Even after everything, some things never changed. HOA business was still tedious, still full of minor disputes and unnecessary drama. But at least now I knew it mattered. The boring work of oversight and verification, the tedious checking and double-checking, that was what kept communities safe. I texted back. I will be there. The sun was setting over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in a prison 200 miles away, Marcus Webb was probably eating dinner in a cafeteria, counting down the years until his release. Meanwhile, in Sunridge Valley, life went on. Better, stronger, and more secure because of what we had learned. Elena was making dinner when I got home. The house smelled like garlic and tomatoes. "How was your walk?" she asked. "Interesting. Met some new neighbors. They actually bought here because of our reputation for HOA oversight." She laughed. "Only you would find that exciting." "It is exciting. It means people are paying attention. It means what happened actually mattered." "It always mattered, Frank. You just did not want to admit that boring HOA stuff could be important." She was right, as usual. I had spent years dismissing HOA business as petty and pointless. It had taken a con artist stealing $43,000 to make me realize that the boring stuff, the verification and documentation and oversight, that was what protected people. Over dinner, Elena told me about her day. Her job at the elementary school was rewarding but exhausting. Third graders had endless energy and endless questions. I told her about the upcoming board meeting and the thrilling debate over pool furniture that awaited. "You should run for the board," she said. "People respect you. You would be good at it." "I do not have time for that level of involvement. You are already involved. You go to every meeting, you serve on 2 committees, you review every major expense. You are basically on the board without the title." I considered that. She had a point. But becoming an official board member felt like crossing a line I had never intended to cross. I was the guy who investigated fraud, not the guy who argued about paint colors and landscaping. "I will think about it," I said, which was my standard response when I meant no but did not want to argue. The following Tuesday, I attended the board meeting as promised. The debate over pool furniture was every bit as tedious as I had expected. People had strong opinions about whether we needed lounge chairs or regular chairs, whether we should buy cheap furniture that would need replacing in a few years, or invest in higher quality options that would last longer. I voted for the higher quality furniture. We had just spent 18 months dealing with the consequences of taking shortcuts. Saving money by cutting corners was not the answer. After the meeting, Robert pulled me aside. "Can we talk for a minute?" We walked outside into the cool evening air. The community center overlooked the pool area, which was empty at this hour. "I wanted to run something by you," Robert said. "I am thinking about not seeking re-election next year. My daughter is having a baby and she lives in Oregon. My wife and I want to spend more time up there." "That is great news about the baby," I said, already sensing where this was going. "I think you should run for president," Robert said. "You have the respect of the community, you understand how things work, and you care about doing things right." "Robert, I am not a politician. I catch criminals and argue about pool furniture." "Exactly. You are not a politician, which is what we need. Sharon was too worried about looking good and keeping everyone happy. You worry about doing the right thing. That is what this community needs." I looked out at the empty pool, the perfectly trimmed hedges, the neat rows of homes stretching into the distance. Sunridge Valley was not perfect, but it was home, and home was worth protecting. "Let me talk to Alina," I said. Robert smiled. "That is not a no. It is not a yes either." But it is not a no. He was right. It was not a no. Alina's reaction was predictable. "I told you that you should run for the board. This is different. This is president. That is a lot of responsibility. You already take on the responsibility without the authority. At least as president you could actually make decisions instead of just advising. What about my actual job? I still work full-time. Robert manages it and he works full-time too. You would figure it out." I spent the next few weeks thinking about it. The more I considered the idea, the less crazy it seemed. I knew the community, I understood the systems, and I genuinely cared about preventing another fraud situation. Maybe I could make a difference. 3 months before the election, I officially announced my candidacy. 2 other people also ran. Patricia Morrison, the current secretary, and a newcomer named David Chen who had strong opinions about everything. The campaign was surprisingly intense. Patricia ran on a platform of experience and institutional knowledge. David promised to slash spending and reduce regulations. I focused on security, transparency, and responsible management. We held a candidates forum 6 weeks before the election. About 75 homeowners showed up, which Robert said was a record. Each candidate gave a brief speech, then answered questions. Patricia went first, emphasizing her years of service and deep understanding of HOA operations. She was competent and knowledgeable but came across as bureaucratic and resistant to change. David spoke passionately about government overreach and HOA tyranny. He wanted to eliminate half the regulations and cut the budget by 40%. His speech resonated with the libertarian contingent but alarmed people who liked the community's well-maintained appearance. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. 18 months ago, our community was targeted by a con artist who exploited our trust and stole $43,000 of your money. It happened because we did not have proper oversight and verification systems in place. Since then, we have implemented new policies and procedures that have made us one of the most secure HOAs in Scottsdale. But we cannot get complacent. My priority as president will be maintaining those security measures while ensuring our community remains a great place to live. That means responsible spending, transparent decision-making, and listening to homeowner concerns. It also means not being afraid to ask questions and verify information before making decisions. Thank you. The applause was warm but not overwhelming. The questions that followed were pointed. How would you handle a situation where a board member was not following proper procedures? Someone asked. I would address it directly with that board member and with the full board if necessary. Accountability has to apply to everyone. What about reducing HOA fees? Another person asked. I am all for controlling costs, but not at the expense of maintaining our property values. Cheap landscaping and deferred maintenance might save money short-term, but they cost us more in the long run. I would rather spend wisely than spend cheaply. You think we have too many rules, Mrs. Henderson asked. I think we have the rules we need to maintain property values and community standards, but I also think we should regularly review those rules to make sure they still make sense. Some regulations are necessary, others might be outdated. I would support a comprehensive rule review to determine which is which. The forum lasted 2 hours. By the end, I felt exhausted but good about my performance. I had been honest, direct, and consistent. Whether that would be enough remained to be seen. Election day arrived in early November. Voting took place over 3 days to give everyone a chance to participate. Ballots could be cast in person at the community center or mailed in. Elena and I voted on the first day. There was something surreal about filling in the bubble next to my own name. How do you think you will do? Elena asked as we walked back to our car. No idea. Patricia has the establishment support, David has the angry taxpayer vote, and I have the fraud prevention platform. Could go any way. The results were announced at the monthly homeowners meeting. The turnout was huge, with over 150 people crammed into the community center. The tension was palpable. Robert stood at the front with the sealed envelope containing the results. Thank you all for participating in this election. We had an impressive turnout, with 68% of homeowners casting ballots. That is the highest participation rate in Sunridge Valley history. He opened the envelope and pulled out the paper. A smile crossed his face. Your new HOA president is Frank Navarro. The room erupted in applause. Elena squeezed my hand. I felt a mix of pride, relief, and sheer terror at what I had just gotten myself into. The final tally was announced. I had received 42% of the vote, Patricia got 31%, and David received 27%. It was not a landslide, but it was decisive. After the meeting, people congratulated me and offered advice. Mrs. Henderson told me not to approve any requests to paint doors weird colors. The Johnsons thanked me for supporting their navy blue door campaign. David Chen shook my hand and said he looked forward to holding me accountable. You are going to be great at this, Robert said. Trust your instincts like you did with Marcus Webb. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the journey that had led here. 18 months ago, I had been an uninvolved homeowner who attended meetings out of curiosity. Now, I was president of a 200-home HOA, responsible for $1 million annual budget and the well-being of an entire community. All because I had noticed something was wrong with a fake property manager's business card and decided to ask questions. No regrets, Elena asked sleepily. Not yet. Ask me again in 6 months, she laughed. You will be fine. You always are. I took office in January, 2 years after the Marcus Webb incident. My first act as president was to establish a permanent fraud prevention committee charged with ongoing monitoring of all vendors and employees. My second act was to complete the comprehensive rule review I had promised, which resulted in eliminating 12 outdated regulations and clarifying another 23. The job was exactly as tedious as I had expected, filled with complaints about parking and landscaping and pool hours. But it was also rewarding in ways I had not anticipated. When we completed a major renovation to the playground and saw kids enjoying the new equipment, that mattered. When we negotiated a better insurance rate that saved every homeowner money, that mattered. When a new resident thanked me for running such a well-managed community, that mattered. And sometimes, late at night when I was reviewing expense reports or checking vendor credentials, I thought about Marcus Webb in prison. His crime had been terrible, causing real harm to real people. But in a strange way, he had also made us better. He had exposed our weaknesses, forced us to improve, and taught us lessons we would not soon forget. 3 years after his arrest, I received a letter from the parole board. Marcus was seeking early release after serving half his sentence. As a victim, I had the right to submit an impact statement. I spent a long time thinking about what to write. Part of me wanted to argue for him to serve every day of his sentence, but another part recognized that prison was not just about punishment. It was supposed to be about rehabilitation. In the end, I wrote a measured statement acknowledging the harm he had caused, while also recognizing that he had cooperated with authorities and helped identify other fraud schemes. I opposed early release, but said I would not object to parole after he served 5 years of his 8-year sentence, provided he continued making restitution payments. The parole board denied his early release request. He would remain in prison for at least another year before being eligible to apply again. Life in Sunridge Valley continued its pleasant routine. Seasons changed, neighbors came and went, and the HOA dealt with an endless stream of minor issues that somehow felt important in the moment. I served 2 terms as president before stepping down to let new leadership take over, though I remained active on several committees. The Webb incident became part of the community's collective memory, a cautionary tale told to new residents and board members. It reminded us to stay vigilant, to verify credentials, to ask questions, and to never assume that someone is trustworthy just because they seem professional. Looking back now, I realize that the whole experience changed me. I went from being cynical about HOA involvement to understanding its importance. I learned that boring administrative work could matter profoundly. I discovered that asking uncomfortable questions was sometimes the most important thing you could do. And I learned that communities, like people, grow stronger through adversity. Sunridge Valley could have been destroyed by what Marcus did. Instead, we became more united, more vigilant, and more committed to protecting each other. Sometimes I drive past the community center where Marcus Webb first introduced himself to us, briefcase in hand and lies on his lips. I remember that moment of instinctive distrust, the feeling that something was wrong even though I could not articulate exactly what it was. I am glad I trusted that instinct. I am glad I asked questions. And I am glad that when something seemed wrong, I did not just shrug and assume someone else would handle it. Because in the end, that is what communities are built on. Individuals who care enough to pay attention, to ask questions, and to take action when something is not right. It is not glamorous work. It is tedious and time-consuming and often thankless. But it matters. It all matters.